Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time again for the journey we call Living Hope. Your journey living with pancreatic cancer. This week with a couple people who've been on that journey. Going to share some about it and really share the thing that's all on our mind is how do we sustain the funding for further research for these in the face of almost certain government cutbacks to research and other things. So Roberta Luna, that sounds scary here.
It's very scary considering what you're looking at today and the cuts and whatnot. But we welcome back pancreatic cancer survivor Robert Panacci to discuss the importance not only of clinical trials, but also the role of venture capital funding to advance cancer treatments, which I'm really interested in because, to be honest with you, I had not heard of this until Rob had brought it up. So I'm very thankful for him for doing that. And when I turn it over to him, but I do want to, I know you did not do a clinical trial, but yet you're a great advocate for that. Why is that?
I think clinical trials are actually very important in sort of cancer therapy development, whether it be therapies, diagnostics, et cetera. Um, I guess, a lot of people sort of get a little bit worried when they say, are we going into a clinical trial? Because it's almost like you're venturing into some unknown. Um, the the one thing about clinical trial, once a therapy or a new cancer treatment gets into clinical trials, it's already gone through a lot of analysis and rigorous testing by the company who's developing, whether it be the particular drug or anything, adjuvant therapies, et cetera. And it isn't until they get to the FDA gate where their theories are approved, and now they can go and proceed to testing on people who are actually dealing with the different cancers that uh, those trials are supposed to take care of. So they're evaluated by the FDA. We spoke last time about how um, you're never going to lose the treatments that you're getting in place. These therapies come in and they're usually in addition to. One of the things that we realize is that when you're in a clinical trial, you get a lot more attention. So, for example, my father, who's gone through prostate cancer for a number of years, he actually, they detected it and he was going through treatment when I was diagnosed. Um, was just, and he lives in Canada, going through the Canadian medical system, which can take a long time to get to testing and um, when you go back and they're you've done your treatment, now they want to go and check out how you're doing, with the treatments and how you're proceeding, and is the cancer staying away, et cetera. Um, I'm losing the word for that now. Um, but yeah, so what happens when you get into a clinical trial with one of these therapies is that the monitoring um, gets more closely monitored. You're doing it more often. You're not waiting the 3 months or 2 to 3 months to get back and do the surveillance. That's the word I was looking for, the surveillance, because you're now part of a very detailed study of whatever that new technology is. So there's really three phases to a clinical trial, and the first step is um, really the safety of it. So they'll take a small group of willing participants and make sure that everything that they believed and was reviewed is working as it's supposed to. Once that safety is validated, now we start to increase the group, um, and we start to match it up against other therapies. So is it any better than what's currently out there? So you're receiving your regular treatment, plus you're getting the additional treatment. You're getting the closer scrutiny and probably faster service with your oncologist or hospital, um, and a little bit more detailed monitoring, because they really want to understand the effectiveness of that treatment. So in that phase two, when they establish that, hey, um, this is more effective than what we currently have on the shelf, right? Now we can move into a broader clinical trial. And I think, the reason I'm an advocate of it, because one, it definitely allows us to understand what new potential therapies are out there, what new diagnostic capabilities are out there, what new testing is out there, things like liquid biopsies, right? I was introduced to an amazing company the other day they were focused specifically on bladder cancer. And one of the challenges with bladder cancer is, even after you go through the treatment, the surveillance is such a painful process to go and make sure that you're still all clear. And, depending on age, depending on physical capability, that might be more difficult, right? Well, if you could introduce a liquid biopsy where instead of having an invasive technique go in and monitor if your cancer is staying away, a urine test might be able to tell you, or a blood test might be able to tell you, versus, having to go through the pain of some of that surveillance. So also, you've got a situation where, the new therapy or the new technology might actually reduce the cost of, current treatments, which makes it a little easier to get through with your drug plan. So to me, clinical trials are an important step. PanCan actually just announced that they've got some new early testing that has gone through some clinical trials quite well. They've been very successful, and that might help with transitioning from not catching pancreatic cancer early enough to being able to shorten that, to be able to catch it early enough in a different type of early monitoring, similar to what you do with your annual prostate exam or your annual breast examination, to be able to move it forward and now say, hey, we've got a better way to detect this earlier. And we know with pancreatic cancer, early detection is extremely important. So being able to do that in a faster, hopefully cheaper method, makes it more accessible and hopefully works to drive down the survival rate, or drive up the survival rate, and drive down the mortality rate around it. So yeah, extremely important. And again, sometimes people fear, okay, well, what am I turning into? Am I becoming a lab experiment? No, by the time they get through the FDA gate, their experiments are usually very well documented, very well analyzed. The level of testing is absolutely very incredible. So you can be assured that it won't do any additional harm. And I can't guarantee it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a researcher, but you're taking the opportunity to do something else aside from what you're already doing to keep that cancer away and to give yourself a better chance of another day. So that's really where I think people need to take advantage of it. They need to be asking their doctors, oncologists up front, are there other therapies that are coming onto the market that are in testing that I can take advantage of? I didn't have to go through them. Again, as we mentioned on the last podcast, based on where I was from a tumor perspective and based on what the doctors can do, and even the chemo that I took, the FOLFIRINOX, was only developed in 2010. So it's relatively new in terms of a cancer treatment. But had it not gone through those clinical trials, had it not proven more effective, right, other chemotherapies that were available might not have been able to reduce the tumor fast enough to be able to get me to radiation and then eventually to surgery. So it really is a good opportunity to try and fight your cancer a different way.
Yeah, I wasn't able to do clinical trial either because I started chemo like the next week and there was just
Yeah.
no time. So, but I'm a big advocate as well, for one, because that's the only way we're going to get our drugs. Like you say, we have to go through this to get the drugs, but we need to get rid of the myths. Like you say, no, we're not a guinea pig. No, it's not the last thing you should be looking at. And you're not going to get a placebo. It's something that you're going to at
Yeah.
least get the standard of care. So it's really important to consider these because without these drugs, we can't move forward. So I really agree. What I didn't know, and I think what a big stressor is that we should really maybe stress a lot, is what you were saying about the surveillance being more so than normal. So I think to me
Mhm.
that would be a big click right there to know, okay, you're going to see me more and check me more often than normally. So I think that's a big plus and something that I didn't know until you said that. So thank you for sharing that.
I've seen that. I've seen that with my dad. Whereas you'd say, okay, he'd finish an appointment and we'd catch up and he'd let me know what was going on, and I'd say, well, okay, when's the next time you're going to see them? Oh, probably not, for another 6 months. That's changed now, since he's gotten into the clinical trial to hold off the prostate cancer. Um, they're seeing him a lot more often, and they're monitoring, the vitals a lot more often, things like that. So you're ahead in terms of making sure that nothing is coming back.
Right. Yeah, that's a
So,
very good point. And before
yeah.
before we move on, because I know, like I said, we do want to talk about funding and whatnot. But what advice would you give to somebody considering a clinical trial?
What?
What advice or best advice would you give to somebody who's considering it?
Yeah, like I said, right up front, after you've been diagnosed and uh, your doctors are talking about whatever protocol or treatment that they think is best, you should inquire about it. You should uh, proactively ask and advocate for yourself and say, is there something else that we can do that, if you're willing to be a little bit more aggressive up front, are there things within your particular area of cancer that you could be taking advantage of and being part of that clinical trial? So, and then requesting the information for it, because it's very transparent. You get all of the information that you need so that you know what you're getting into, right? And then if your comfort level is still the same, you can proceed.
Yeah.
It's never an unknown. You never, from my understanding of it, and the people that I've spoken to and other things that I've listened to, you're not going into it blindly. So don't think of yourself as I hate to use the term guinea pig,
I
but
know, right?
yeah, but do think of yourself as creating an opportunity to really understand newer technologies that are available that can get you to your goal of living longer, faster.
And offering maybe some support and some hope for somebody with fighting the
Exactly.
disease. So, again, yes, we can never talk too much about clinical trials. I think it's very, very important. But I do want to
Yeah.
move on because you have a very interesting background there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I know it's venture capital funding. And to be honest with you, until you brought it up, I had no clue what it is, and still don't. So, can you enlighten us a bit?
I will. There's a couple things that I did want to mention. Your podcast with Dr. Afreen Sharif,
Yes.
I thought that was wonderful. I think anybody who's listening to this should go back and listen to that one. Um, I've listened to Dr. Sharif on a number of podcasts. Her view of cancer in general, um, as a metabolic disease, as a way that the body is not functioning with its endocrine system properly, both pre and post diagnosis or post treatment, very important. So, her being the doctor, she could explain it a lot better than I can, but I do encourage people to go and take a look at that.
Well, thank you very
Um,
much. And she's actually coming back probably in May or June.
oh, that's exciting. Good.
Yes, yes,
Good.
thank you.
Um, and we were talking to Paul earlier about kind of the recent funding cuts to research, which I think is a very important point as we lead into the venture capital aspect of it. Pancreatic cancer research at the federal level lost over 50% of their funding, uh, which is which is really discouraging for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of that research, like any other government research, becomes the foundational research for a lot of these companies who are trying to develop these novel therapies, and technologies. So similar to, Elon Musk didn't invent the rocket. Uh, you know, Scientists working through the federal government, built rocket propulsion theories and sciences up, and then companies can take those technologies and move them forward, right? Make them better, take them to the place of being able to be of real use within the world. And that's the same thing with with cancer research. We think, okay, what's going to happen to this research that is foundational to these companies that need that little bit more. It's discouraging, and we've talked about it before. There's no reason to not be a fan of reducing government waste and making things more efficient, but something like research, it's not like something you can take lightly. Research operations are not turnkey. You can't just sort of shut them down for a couple months and then hope to come back, because you get funding from somewhere else. Scientists move on, researchers move on, staff moves on. They have to go and obviously find another way to make a living or use their skills. And just cutting that off and shutting things down really creates a situation where now you're going to have to rebuild. So that I think hopefully we're the victims of a lot of not information. I think that's one of the most challenging things of all these cuts, regardless of where they're going on, is what is the information about it, behind it? What's the strategy behind it? How are they going to move forward after this? One of the things that I've seen within the Canadian system is that, and I see it happening here, ASU in Phoenix is taking a big role in biosciences, along with partnerships with Mayo and other bioscience communities within the Phoenix area, and looking to develop those research labs within the university system. Canada's does a lot of that within their university system. Research is funded through them, and then that research, moves on. That's where things like venture capital comes in. So venture capital, basically, when we hear that, we think about, what's happening with the latest artificial intelligence, or venture capital is what funded the fact that I've got 4 rideshare apps on my phone and 3 food delivery apps on my phone. All those companies start off with private capital, people who are willing to take the risk and say, this company's got a good idea, it's got a good foundation for what they're developing, and we feel it could be marketable. Whether it gets absorbed by another company through through a merger, or whether they can survive in the business world via IPO, so they become public property. And venture capital is kind of the funding that happens before everybody gains that level of confidence. So at Cancer Fund, the founder at Cancer Fund reached out to me at the beginning of the year, and we started talking about venture capital in terms of pancreatic cancer. Cancer Fund has investments in other types of cancers at the development level. So beyond research, they're in the development phase. They've got some good backing behind their new technologies in terms of data and information on how it will work and the things that it's going to do differently from what's going on out there. And it's usually then when they're looking for funding to take them to the next level, which is getting past that FDA gate and getting to clinical trials. So Cancer Fund takes a look at companies that specifically deal with cancer technologies, and then look for investors that are willing to participate and take the risk of moving those companies to the next levels. And that comes with a lot of scrutiny. We want to make sure that the company's got a viable solution, that they're well run, that they've got some good experts in the field. The other thing about Cancer Fund is it's community based. So when we think of venture capital, we think of, you have to be a millionaire, right? You have to be part of the venture capital crowd in Silicon Valley with pockets full of money that you don't know what to do with, and you throw into companies, emerging companies that might show a profit at some point. What Cancer Fund does is our founder, Anthony, has been building a community of just everyday people who have been impacted by cancer. So whether they be survivors, pre-survivors, we've got researchers, we've got doctors, oncologists, people who are affected by cancer in some way, or work with cancer in other ways, and has brought them together to say, hey, we want to give you an opportunity to invest and drive some of that innovation. We call it impact investment. So the focus is on really making a better community that is willing to provide the resources to get these companies off the ground and provide these therapies, diagnostics, et cetera, that are really going to move the needle on cancer survivability rates, cancer treatment rates, surveillance rates, all of that. So you don't have to be a millionaire. You can, you can sign up, and whether you've got $100 or $1 million, if we can provide to you, and it's a transparent process. So along the way, you know who we're looking at. You have a chance to have input. So if you are an oncologist and you see a company that does really have, something new and something novel out there that should be promoted, you can do that, or not do it. It depends. To the layperson, they get a real glimpse of sort of what's happening in the background. It's one of the reasons why I've always preached that you have to have hope to survive cancer. It's very important. I have more hope now than ever, because over the last 3 months, I've been exposed to a whole world, a whole ecosystem that I didn't know existed. I knew that my doctors at Mayo were great. I knew that the support staff at Mayo were absolutely fantastic in terms of taking me through the process. But there is a whole ecosystem of scientists, research, really smart people who are, and you talk to a lot of them, there's always some connection to cancer. The founders of those companies, they may have gone through cancer. They may have lost someone important through cancer. And, that motivation of driving change, actually coming up with something that's going to make a difference, is usually the momentum behind what they're doing. So when Anthony reached out in January, his goal was he'd seen that I was a strong advocate for pancreatic cancer, and kind of like the fact that I didn't feel it was getting the attention that it should, and I think it's getting the attention. That my mind has sort of changed there, but it's just a really difficult cancer. There are so many variables when it comes to pancreatic cancer, and one of the reasons why it's hard to detect is there could be so many things going on. So we had discussed developing a fund specifically towards therapies that are focused on pancreatic cancer, and that's what I've been doing. So working with their venture capital hunters, working with the biosciences community here in Phoenix and around North America, to understand what are the new things that are being developed, and is there an opportunity where we can help them through capital, through private capital, versus waiting for governments or other agencies to come in and help. The other eye-opening thing was, sometimes we donate to foundations and or charities, and we notice that a lot more, and it's not a difficult thing to get in. The tough part about standing up a venture capital organization is having the ability to do the research and have the people that are going to see what these opportunities are and determine if it's a good investment idea. I mean, the risk is already high enough, but really we're focused on the impact. So it's not uncommon. It's really a world that people should explore. Within Cancer Fund, the opportunity there is that you don't have to, there's no minimum level of investment other than that $100. And the only reason we cap it at 100 is, the accounting behind that $100 becomes very difficult. So, but we are looking for people who do want to put in major investments. So we are talking to the different foundations and trying to find out how we can use some of their capital to fund the research behind pancreatic. And it's not limited to any one thing. There's a wide variety of areas that you can improve. Diagnostics is a great opportunity to make early detection possible. We talked about easier surveillance, reducing the cost of surveillance. I know I'm still getting surveilled at the every 4 to 5 month period, depending on scheduling. But you know, and I don't mean to. It is what it is. At the beginning of the year, prior to my my insurance kicking in, right after after you have to pay out your initial costs up front, and then once that gets fulfilled, you get to the insurance takes care of the rest. Those surveillance treatments can get quite expensive. Mine aren't painful. I do a regular CT scan with the injection dye, but like we talked about with bladder cancer, surveillance can be very painful, can be very debilitating when you have to do it, and it's also very expensive. So the goal is to make a difference in those, make it easier, so that cancer is caught earlier, so that cancer is understood better, and we can really see some breakthroughs. We spoke earlier, the American Journal of Medicine shows pancreatic cancer as one of the only major cancer, which is the third deadliest cancer already, of having increased mortality rates up until the year 2040, right? One of the things that I love about Dr. Sharif is that, she really takes a holistic approach in terms of, looking at the overall wellness of a patient, right? And being able to understand some of those impacting factors like diabetes and other things that are sort of precursors, right? I never knew. So in 2013, I was diagnosed with a hyperthyroid. So I daily I have to take a thyroid medication to make sure that my thyroid's moving properly. Well, the thyroid affects everything, your digestion, your immune system, etc. Knowing that I had a problem with that could have been and then I remember back then I was also dealing with prediabetes, right? Prediabetes, it's a flag that says, hey, you need to be watching out for potentially pancreatic cancer. But none of that was discussed. None of that was talked about. I mean, my doctors were very good. I was very lucky with how they pushed me through the system to get the treatment I needed to attack it right away. But, we all know our doctors are very busy nowadays. The focus and priority might not always be where it needs to be. So having that extra attention and having that sort of big picture view really makes a difference.
Yeah, it does, and unfortunately, we're out of time, and then there's so much more I want to talk about. We're just going to have you come back. You're just going to have to be our monthly guest or something. I don't know. We'll have to do a series with you, but we really do appreciate, you coming again and talking about this, because it's very interesting. Like I said, I really want to have you come back because I think there's so much more that we can talk about. So,
and you know me, I can talk forever. So
I know you really made my job easy today, so thank you. I really appreciate that. But thank you, and we will definitely have you back and continue. And I think Paul has a comment or something.
How do they reach out to find about the Cancer Fund Impact Investments?
Yes.
Yep, you can reach me directly at robert.panacci@cancerfund.com.
And let's spell that.
ROBERT.PANACCI@cancerfund.com.
One N and two C's. One
N
N
and two C's.
All right.
And you can go to cancerfund.com and learn more about us. And if pancreatic cancer is something that you want to make sure doesn't meet the prediction of so many institutions, let me know. I'll give you a way to help.
Great. Thank you very much again. We appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. As long as you speak my name, I shall live forever is dedicated to Annie Noble Jewell. Her strength, faith, and resilience forever changed the way I see fighting and surviving pancreatic cancer. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Some really good reasons to tune in, not just this time, but next time as well. as we continue to explore this weekly journey we call Living Hope. All designed to provide hope, inspiration, education, and maybe even a way to get involved now for those living with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real-life stories of those really affected and how they deal with it on a daily basis. And if you'd like to share your story, you can certainly contact us, or if you have anyone who needs help immediately, lots of resources. We've talked about many of them on this show. Let's plug one of the ones right here locally. Patient services at PanCan. That's 877-2PAN for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. For the OC Talk Radio Network, I'm Paul Roberts. Hoping you'll join us again, and most of all, share this story with others on this journey we call Living Hope. Streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.